Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to uncover the pretty surprising and, often controversial story behind a daily American ritual. It's a story that involves a forgotten salute, a clever marketing scheme, and even a Supreme Court showdown.
So you've probably said these 31 words 1,000 times in your life. But what if I told you the version you know, well, it isn't the original? That the pledge has actually been changed multiple times, usually in reaction to whatever was making the country anxious at the time.
And get this, it's not just the words. The actual gesture, the salute that went with it, has a wild history of its own, full of controversy and change that might really surprise you. So, okay, let's peel back the layers of this ritual we all think we know.
Let's start at the very beginning. The original pledge's origins, patriotism, promotion, and profit. We're going back to the late 19th century, a time of post-Civil War patriotism, but also a lot of anxiety about immigration. And, as it turns out, it was also the result of some seriously clever marketing.
You see, the pledge was really the main event of a national campaign run by a magazine called The Youth's Companion. Now, the goal here was kind of twofold. One, instill a strong sense of American nationalism in schoolchildren. And two, not so coincidentally, sell a whole lot of American flags to schools all across the country. But what's really fascinating is what the author, Francis Bellamy, decided to leave out. He was a Christian socialist, so he actually thought about putting in the words equality and fraternity, like the French Revolution. But he ended up deciding against it. He called equality a dubious word for the time, which is just, wow. What an incredible peek into the social and racial politics of that era. Okay, but wait a second. Was Bellamy even the real author? For more than a century, the story of who actually penned the pledge has been way more complicated than you might think. It's a real historical whodunit. So before Bellamy's version was even a thing, a lot of schools were using this other one, written by a Civil War vet named George T. Balch. It was super simple, very direct. Bellamy, though, he thought it was, and I'm quoting here, too juvenile and lacking in dignity. That's what pushed him to write his own more poetic version. For decades, this whole debate has just been simmering about who really deserves the credit. You've got Bellamy, the guy who's officially recognized, then you've got James B. Upham, the marketing guy whose family swore he wrote it, and then, and this is the wildest one, there's a 13-year-old kid from Kansas who might have submitted an almost identical pledge to a contest months before the official one ever got published. But honestly, the argument over who wrote it is just the beginning of the story. The words themselves, they've been anything but set in stone. They have shifted with the anxieties of the times, almost like a mirror, reflecting American history. I mean, just look at how much the pledge has transformed over the last century or so. That original 1892 version is pretty different from what you hear in classrooms today, right? So let's break down the two biggest changes and figure out why they happened.
The first major rewrite was really fueled by the anxieties floating around after World War I, especially about immigration and loyalty. Groups like the American Legion got worried that when immigrant kids said "my flag," they might be thinking about the flag of the country they were born in. So, to leave absolutely no room for confusion, they made the wording super explicit. Then, of course, came the most famous addition of all, "under God." This happened in 1954, right at the peak of the Cold War. The whole idea was to draw this really sharp line in the sand between the U.S. and what was called godless communism. When President Eisenhower signed it into law, he actually talked about it as strengthening the spiritual weapons of the nation.
But it wasn't just the words that changed. For the first 50 years, the pledge came with a specific physical salute, a salute that was completely abandoned for a very unsettling reason.
Yeah, this was it. It was called the Bellamy salute. The original instructions said you'd start with your hand over your heart, but then, as you said the words "to my flag," you'd extend your arm straight out toward the flag with your palm up. And this was just standard practice. Every kid in every school all across America did this. But then, by the late 1930s, its really striking similarity to another salute that was popping up in Europe became, impossible to ignore. I mean, this side-by-side comparison pretty much says it all. You can see exactly why a change was desperately needed. The visual parallels were just way too close for comfort. So you can imagine, right in the middle of World War II, Congress acted fast. Really fast. In December of 1942, they officially changed the flag code and got rid of the Bellamy salute, replacing it with the simple hand-over-heart gesture for the whole pledge, the very same one we still use today. But making all those changes didn't exactly put an end to the controversies. Nope. In fact, they've just kept on coming, right into the modern era, through dozens of legal and social challenges.
The pledge has been right at the heart of some major court battles over freedom of speech and religion. And look at this. This is incredible. In 1940, the Supreme Court says, yep, schools can absolutely force students to say the pledge. But then, just 3 years later, they do a complete 180 and reverse themselves, saying that forcing someone to recite it is unconstitutional. And illegal fights over the words "under God," they're still going on.
And that 1943 ruling, West Virginia versus Barnett, it gave us one of the most powerful and honestly poetic defenses of free speech in all of American legal history. The court made it crystal clear. No government official, no matter how powerful, gets to force citizens to confess a belief. That set a huge precedent for individual liberty.
So the next time you hear someone recite the Pledge of Allegiance, or maybe say it yourself, just remember that its history is really a reflection of the country itself, constantly being debated, frequently getting altered, and never, ever as simple as it seems. It really makes you wonder, right? Is it a symbol of unity? Or has its whole evolving story actually made it a source of division? And maybe the bigger question is, what does this ongoing debate over 31 little words say about who we are and who we're trying to become?